All right, let's jump right in. I want to tell you about this really fantastic story. It's about a totally normal middle manager, a cog in the giant corporate machine. But it's really about the quiet, powerful principles that ended up defining his entire career. This isn't a story about big, heroic gestures. It's about the incredible strength you can find in quiet integrity.
So let me paint a picture for you. You've got this mid-level guy in a pretty typical company, and he is stuck, really stuck, right in the middle. He's getting squeezed from headquarters above him and the frontline workers below him, squeezed by clients on one side and subcontractors on the other. He's got all this responsibility on his shoulders, but when it comes down to it, almost zero real power to make the final call.
And you have to understand, the personal stakes here are huge. We're talking about a mortgage, 2 kids to support. For him, just packing up and finding a new job, that is just not a realistic option. He's keenly aware that if he rocks the boat too much, there's absolutely no one in that company who's going to stick their neck out to protect him. And that context is so important because it makes the choices he's about to make that much harder and, frankly, that much more impressive. The pressure, well, it comes from every direction. From his own bosses, it's always about speed over doing things by the book. You know the line, right? Hey, just overlook it this one time. We can always fix the paperwork later. It's a promise that everyone in the room knows is completely empty.
Then, of course, you've got the pressure from the clients. And it's never a direct command, is it? It's always this kind of subtle, loaded question. That little hint that, it would be a real problem for us if you can't meet these special conditions. It puts all the pressure right back on him to just make it happen, whatever it is.
And it's not just from the top. It's coming from below, too. The subcontractors. They can feel the squeeze, and they might offer a way out. We could probably make this work if we just push things a little bit. They're trying to be helpful, trying to get the job done. But what they're really suggesting is cutting corners, a risk that he, and only he, would be on the hook for.
So early in his career, he caved just once. He signed off on something he shouldn't have, and that one decision led to a completely sleepless night. That was it. That was his light bulb moment. He realized with total, ice-cold clarity that if something went sideways, an accident, an audit, anything, the company would not protect him. He would be all alone. And that single realization became the bedrock of his entire professional philosophy.
So what's a guy to do? Faced with all this pressure, he could have taken one of 2 paths. He could have become a loud crusader fighting for justice at every turn. Or he could have just given in, become another compliant yes man. But he didn't. He carved out a third path, a much, much quieter one.
You see, his whole approach wasn't about some single heroic action. It was a very deliberate choice to live in that space between the 2 extremes. He decided he was not going to be a doormat, but he was also smart enough to know that being the office crusader was just a fast track to getting pushed out. So instead, he chose a path of quiet resilience.
And this quiet approach turned into a very practical, everyday strategy. His method wasn't about picking fights or creating drama. It was about the subtle but powerful art of calmly and consistently drawing lines in the sand.
He basically developed a toolkit of 3 simple, non-confrontational phrases. First, that is beyond my authority. It just cleanly deflects any request that's out of line. Second, I cannot do it that way. It's direct, but it's not personal. It's a hard no without starting a fight. And the third one is the real genius. I will consider another method. This shows he's not just a roadblock. He's not being difficult. He's committed to finding the right way to solve the problem. No drama, just boundaries. And his other tactics were just as subtle. He never, ever raised his voice or got into long, drawn-out explanations. He kept meticulous, objective records of everything. In a meeting, he wouldn't argue against a bad idea, but he also wouldn't be seen nodding along and agreeing to it either. And my personal favorite tactic of his, when some unrealistic demand came down from headquarters, he wouldn't fight it. He would simply translate it into its logical, real-world consequences. For example, okay, implementing this new KPI will likely increase the accident rate by this much. He used cold, hard logic, not emotion, as his shield.
Now you have to understand, this strategy is not a recipe for a fast promotion. Not at all. In the short term, his performance reviews might have even taken a hit. People probably saw him as difficult or uncooperative. But the real payoff for his quiet principles, that comes much, much later.
And here's how this long game plays out. For years, he just quietly and consistently holds his ground. Then, and this is inevitable, a huge crisis hits the company. Maybe it's a quality defect, a serious accident, whatever. An investigation starts, and everyone's work gets put under a microscope.
And this is when his quiet consistency turns into a superpower. His records are clean. His name never comes up in connection to the problem. In the aftermath, he's not celebrated as a hero, no. He becomes something far more valuable. The one person in the whole organization that everyone knows, without a doubt, they can absolutely trust.
And here's a really crucial ripple effect of his principles. Because he never pressured his subcontractors or backed them into a corner, he actually created a little bubble of trust. He gave them an escape route to be honest with him. And what did they give him in return? The single most valuable thing in business: early warnings. They'd come to him and say, hey, this process is starting to look a little shaky. And that allowed him to prevent disasters before they ever had a chance to happen.
So how does this kind of wisdom get passed down? Well, it's not something you're going to find in the company handbook or hear about in a big motivational speech. His legacy was built in these small, practical actions and quiet warnings to the people who were smart enough to listen.
He wasn't that guy telling old war stories to the younger employees. His mentorship was much more direct, much more practical. It was a simple, hey, don't touch that file, or don't rush that signature. It's not glamorous advice, is it? It's all about helping others avoid the same traps. His legacy isn't measured in the victories he won, but in the failures he quietly helped prevent.
And this brings us to the core idea, what the source material calls the pride of a cog. This isn't about being a hero. It's not about self-sacrifice. It's a different kind of professional pride. It's the pride that comes from accepting your role, no matter how small it seems, and making a deep commitment to being the most reliable, principled, and unbreakable part of that machine you can possibly be. It's the quiet integrity that actually allows the whole system to keep running smooth.
So this is the thought I really want to leave you with. In our work culture today, which so often rewards the loudest voice in the room and celebrates constant self-promotion, what is the real power, the true long-term value of this kind of understated, resilient, quiet integrity?